Om Shri Sai Ram. Thank you, and all the Sai devotees who have gathered today on this auspicious Tritiya during the Sharan Navaratri, as we call it. Normally at this time, I would be spending time in our temple near Bangalore, or we would be in Prasanthi Nilayam for the Devi Navaratri program that is going on. But this year, due to some unavoidable circumstances, both of us had to be in Mumbai, and therefore we are sitting in a hotel room and remembering Devi and remembering all of you. Incidentally, our sojourn in Mumbai started with my visits to Mahalakshmi temple. And though I've come to the temple many times, this time was the most satisfying part of the visits. We were able to sit there and perform the puja. And it was a lovely darshan that we had every day. So that's where our this sojourn in Mumbai began. Now, the topic for today's talk, I thought since we're meeting at a time when the Navaratri is on, let us reflect upon the Divine Mother principle, that is the Devi principle. And so, the tradition has it that during this period of 9 days of worship, one concentrates on the Divine Mother. Now, as the story goes, and I will narrate it in my own way as we go along with this talk, which is approximately going to be an hour's time, we're going to be talking about different aspects of Devi, and you'll slowly come to know that Devi here does not literally mean only one god or goddess. It is the very embodiment of the supreme being. And that's how the story unfolds as we go along. Now, there are many Puranas. In 18 are the major Puranas that we have. In these Puranas, one of them is called the Markandeya Purana. And in the Markandeya Purana, we have a portion which is 700 verses. And therefore, that is in exploration of Devi. And therefore, that is called Saptashati. So, Saptashati literally in Sanskrit means 700. So, we are now talking, the composition itself is now known popularly as Saptashati. And people also refer to it as Devi Mahatmya. Mahatmya means greatness. Like Mahatma is Mahatmya. Mahatmya means one, what is the greatness of the great person. So, that's how this is understood. So, the Purana talks about a number of aspects, and I will go very briefly. What we are proposing to do in the course of this talk is that I will be narrating some of the factual aspects of the matter, and I will request Madhuri to chant some of the verses which are very important in this composition. Because after all, we are worshipping God, therefore we should have a particular methodology of worshipping God. Because as all of you know, even in Puttaparthi, when you see inside the Mandir, when puja is taking place, we have what is called as the Shodasha Upachara Puja. Shodasha means 16. Upachara means what offerings you do. So 16 types of offerings we offer to Bhagwan every day in our puja. So the same way when you do any vrata, vrata is a particular puja which you do by your own sankalpa. Sankalpa meaning that you decide that you are going to perform. Like for example, the Varasiddhi Vinayaka vrata. That means Ananta Padmanabha Vrata. That means in your family or you yourself will take a decision that I am going to propitiate this particular deity. And that is the Vrata Puja that is done. Now that is different from worshipping Devi during this auspicious time. So we go back a little history to understand why it is necessary and what is the background of this. You know, Veda Vyasa is supposed to be the composer of all the 4 Vedas. There is a lot of discussion on who Veda Vyasa was, etc. But what we hear is that Krishna, his other name is Krishna Dvaipayana. He was the son of Satyavati, who was a fisherwoman. In the sense, you know, all the Indian scriptures talk about great personalities, realized souls who are not belonging to the Brahmin community or caste. See, today, people think that everything is being taken by Brahmins, but it is not so. Our scriptures always recognize that to attain God and to go near God and to get salvation, your circumstance of birth is immaterial. In fact, Swami has said this on many occasions. And the Shastras and the Puranas, they emphasize this aspect. Therefore, can you imagine that the originator of the Veda is a person who came from not such a high caste or community, and he is the one who composed it. Now, Vedavyasa had a son called Shuka, is called Shuka Maharshi, and one more called Suta, he is also called Lomaharshana. There are several rishis that are referred to in the course of the Markandeya Purana. I just mentioned their names, Pauranika, Shaunaka, etc. Now, the great part of our Indian tradition history is that everything is set in a very easy, flowing narrative as to how things began. Now, the background for this Devi Mahatmya is that, we have 4 yugas. Now, currently, we are in the Kali Yuga. The next one is supposed to be the Sathya Yuga. The one immediately preceding was the Treta Yuga when Bhagavan Sri Ram was there. The Dwapar Yuga. That was Bhagavan Krishna. And the one before that was Treta Yuga and Bhagavan Sri Ram was there. So from the Kali Yuga is supposed to be a period of time when there's a lot of strife, a lot of problems, people will be in difficulties. And therefore the scriptures prescribe that after Kali Yuga comes the Satya Yuga. Now how does Satya Yuga come? And Satya Yuga, Yuga in terms of mathematical calculation, it runs into some millions of years. So obviously, we are not going to be around in this form for that period to experience the bliss of the Satya Yuga. And therefore, a prayer is made to the Divine Mother to say, you have to find some way in which we get redemption in this Yuga itself, and we don't have to wait for Satya Yuga. So the entire story is being narrated by Suta, and there is a prayer that is made to the 3 triumvirate of Indian gods. There is the Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the protector, and Mahesha, the destroyer of the universe. Now, these 3, they have their respective consorts, as we all know. Brahma's consort is Saraswati, Vishnu's consort is Lakshmi, and Maheshwara's consort is Uma or Parvati. Of course, there are many names for all of them. So, a combination of the powers of these 3 divine beings is what is being invoked, and the expression that it used is Devi Bhuvaneshwari. Now, there is also an auspicious time when this has to be performed, and that is usually just after the Paksha Masa, which ends with the Mahalaya Amavasya, a few days ago, 3 days ago. The auspicious period of Navaratri has now begun, and this is also called Sharan Navaratri. So, how do you do the worship? There are some procedures we have to do. One is that you must either set up a Sri Chakra Yantra if you have one. If you don't have it, you put a Kalasha. A Kalasha is a small container, round container. Below that, you place some rice and you put the Kalasha. You have to keep water in it. And on top of the Kalasha, at the opening, you can either place mango leaves or beet leaves and place a coconut on top of it and decorate the coconut with haldi, kumkum, and also a garland around it. So this is the invocation of all the pujas that we do. Many of the other homas and havanas we do. If you all have noticed, in Puttaparthi also, when they're doing the yajna in Navaratri, they make a Navagraha Avahana and they put it in this Kalashas. So that is a standard pattern that is there whenever you do this worship. Now, how do you invoke God? How do you invoke a particular deity is one thing which arises. So the tradition is that you invoke it with a Bija mantra or a stotra. Stotra is the praise of the Lord or one particular Bija mantra. For example, if you are doing Gayatri Japa every day, there is a Dhyana Shloka and a Bija mantra for that. Same way for Devi Upasana, there are 2 Bija mantras that we hear of, and I will just chant them and then hand over to Madhuri to say a few words. The Bija mantra is Om Hrim Shrim Dam Durgaye Namaha. Om Shrim Hrim Shlim Dam Durgaye Namaha. So this is one Bija mantra. The other one is Om Hrim Shrim Chandikaye Namaha. Om Hrim Shrim Chandikaye Namaha. So with these invocatory mantras, we then go and the Markandeya Purana, like many other Puranas, even the Upanishads go into dialogue mode when it's teaching something. In that same manner, we now start a dialogue. And I will come to the dialogue and take you through how the story develops. But before that, there is a concise version of the Saptashati, which the saints and sages have propounded that if you chant these seven shlokas, which Madhuri is going to chant now, it is the sum and substance of the entire Devi Saptashati, 700 verses. It is like the condensed form. You get a small pill to cure a big ailment. No? It is something like that. It is like a capsule form. And so I now request Madhuri to chant the Durga Saptashati, and thereafter I'll explain to you two more prayers which we have to chant before we begin the worship of Devi by the reading of the Saptashati.
Sairam to all of you. It's a pleasure again getting connected to all of you. It's believed that the Saptashloki, if you are unable to chant the whole uh, Saptashati, that should be enough. So this is the dialogue between Shiva and Deva. So, Om Namaschandikaye, Om Shri Durgaye Namaha, Om Jnani Namapi Chedamsi Devi Bhagavati Hisa Balada Krishna Mohaya Mahamaya Prayachati Durge Smruta Harisi Bhiti Mashesha Janto Swastai Smruta Mati Mati Vashubam Dadasi Daridra Dukkha Bhayaharini Katvadanya सर्वोपकारकरणाय सदार्धचित्ता सर्वमङ्गलमाङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोऽस्तुते शरणागतदीनार्थ परित्राणपरायणे सर्वस्यार्तिहरे देवी नारायणि नमोऽस्तुते सर्वस्वरूपे सर्वेशे सर्वशक्ति समन्विते भयेभ्यस्त्राहि नो देवी दुर्गे देवी नमोस्तुते रोगान शेषान पहंसि तुष्टा पृष्ठानुकामान सकलान भीष्टान् त्वामाश्रितानां न विपन्नराणां त्वामाश्रितायाश्रयदा प्रयान्ति सर्वबाधा प्रशमनं त्रैलोक्यस्याखिलेश्वरी एकमेव त्वया कार्यमस्मद्वैरिविनाशनम् इति श्री सप्तश्लोकी दुर्गा सम्पूर्णम्.
With the chanting of this, we have now summarized the whole meaning of the 700 verses. And once you do this, the Devi is sitting in your heart because you are concentrating on the Devi form. Now, to give it more strength, there are two other stotras which come at the beginning of the Saptashati. One is called the Devi Kavacha, and the other one is called the Argala Stotra. These are also, again, to orient our mind towards the Devi, because our mind is wandering all the time. So, by chanting these two, Devi Kavacha is, you invoke Devi and her various powers and make a shield over different parts of our body. So that is the establishment of a Devi Kavacha. And Argala Stotra is praise of the Devi. Madhuri will chant, it's a long stotra. So she's going to chant just 3 verses from each of them. And now you will hear Devi Kavacha.
Ata Shri Devi Kavacham Om Namaschandikaye Markandeya Uvacha Yadguyam Paramam Loke Sarvarakshakaram Nunam Yanyakasya Chitakyatam Tanme Bruhi Pitamaha Brahmovacha Asti Guhyatamam Vipra Sarvo Bhutopakarakam Devyastu Kavacham Punyam Tachunusva Mahamune Navamam Siddhidatri cha Navdurga Prakirtita Ukta Netani Namani Brahmanaiva Mahatmana.
She chanted only 3 verses. If you chant the rest of the verses, there are different forms. You say Prathamam is the first one. Dvitiyam. Prathamam name is Shailaputri. Second name, Dvitiyam cha Brahmacharini. Like this, there are different names that are given to deities. The goddess is all narrated in this. And as you finish reading the Kavacham, you will take all her names, because the way we worship God is by taking God's name. So in the same way, this stotra will give you an introduction to various names of the Devi and invoking her blessings. The next is called Argala Stotra. This is also another stotra. Now, they often say Vishnu is Stotra Priya. Now, Rudra is Abhisheka Priya. Alankara Priya is Vishnu. Like this, each of the deities has different things which pleases them. So, for the Devi, the devotion and the prayer made to Devi is something which she likes. Therefore, we have the Argala Stotra. Madhuri will now chant a few verses from Argala Stotra.
Adashi Argala Stotram Om Namah Chandikaye Markandeya Vacha Om Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadra Kali Kapalini Durga Kshama Shiva Dhatri Swaha Swadha Namostute Jai Tvam Devi Chamunde Jai Bhutartiharini Jai Sarvagate Devi Kalaratri Namostute Ratabija Devi Chanda Munda Vinashini Rupam Dehi Jayam Dehi Yasho Dehi Disho Dehi Dehi Saubhagyam Arogyam Dehi Me Paramam Sukham Rupam Dehi Jayam Dehi Yasho Dehi Disho Dehi. There are many such what should I say? Prayers in this, and I have just chanted a few, 3 or 4. But a regular practice of this also gives you immense blessings from the Durga.
Now I go to the actual text. The whole Saptashati is divided into 13 chapters. Each chapter has got a particular name, and what is contained in the chapter is narrated. The size of each chapter is different, and the theme is also different. Now, as I go along, you'll realize that a lot of attention is paid in this to the destruction of evil forces by the Devi. Now, to show the destruction of the evil forces, the authors of the Purana, they use certain allegories, like, a Rakshasa, an Asura, who is all doing wrong things and bad things. So the Devi is taking shape to annihilate that person. In other words, the bad qualities of a man and the bad qualities which come slowly and get imbibed into us, they have to be shot down and tackled. And so the allegorical meaning of this is that goddess has to come. If you pray to goddess, she will come. And when you pray to say that, please remove my bad qualities. And that's what she is there for. So to give you this, a story is necessary. So it starts by saying, in the first chapter, which is called Surya Savarnika. Now, it starts by saying, Savarni is the son of Surya. In the Indian pantheon of gods, there are many gods, and Indra is supposed to be the principal of those gods who sits in his heavenly abode, and he is the one who controls many things at the instance of the supreme being, which is Brahman, or the triumvirate of Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Now, Savarni is the son of Surya, and he is called the 8th Manu, because, when we take the everyday Sankalpa, we will talk of Manvantare, which Manvantara it is, which era or age it is. In each Yuga, there are different ages. In Kali Yuga, there are different ages. So this is all astronomically calculated. So the story starts by saying, there was a very great king called Suratha, and he was born in the Chitra dynasty, and he was ruling over a very large extent of land, and he was a great ruler. He protected his children all the time, and he protected all his peasants, his citizens, as his own children. And for many years, he was there. He had won great number of battles, and he is the one who had succeeded entirely in his role as a king. He had also adopted a certain stance spiritually, where he was able to control his desires and also not spend all the money on himself. Now, after some time, there was some problem, and Suratha and his children didn't get along well. And over a period of time, Suratha lost the kingdom, and then he started wandering around, went to a forest, and went to the hermitage of one rishi called Medas. And he was living in that hermitage, being like an ordinary person without the kingdom being under his control. But the thing is, when after he had lost all these things also, and he was still there, he was worrying about his possessions. He was always thinking, oh, I had a kingdom, I had so many people with me, I had so many servants, I had so much money, I had so many family, I had children. All of these things kept on worrying him all the time. Then suddenly, one trader from the Vaishya community, he also was running a very great business. He was doing things very well. And suddenly, over a period of time, he lost all his possessions, he lost all his wealth. And then he also starts wandering, and he comes into the same hermitage. And he tells that, my children threw me out of my house. They don't worry about me, and they're not bothered if I live or I die. And therefore, I thought there's no point in being there, and therefore, I've come to this forest. And they start talking to each other. Now, the king, the former king, Suratha, and they start talking. And one question the king asks, why is your mind always attached to your wife, your children, and all those people who have deprived you of all your wealth? They are the ones who threw you out. Why is your mind still running back? Why is it that you are not able to forget them? Then the Suratha Samadhi answers to say, my mind is going back and forth, back and forth. I'm running into that same situation. I'm putting myself in where I was. My pain has not reduced. It is becoming hard to, with heat. As some things is heated, it becomes hard, you see. So like that, my pain is not reduced at all. And it's going on like this. So what do we do? I don't know. Is this dialogue is taking place between the king and this trader? And then decide, okay, we'll go to the sage and we'll ask him. We'll go to the rishi and ask him, why do you think? So then they go to the rishi and they ask a question. Then the question is, why do we think of our assets which are no longer mine? No, I had a house, it's not mine. I had a car, it's not mine. I had a family, they are not mine. Why do we still go on thinking of that? Why is the need for us to go on thinking of that? The question is, why do we continue to have affection for our family or attachments? These are already bringing us distress. So why do we still continue to do that? Is a question. And the wise sage answers. He says, the senses in our body, they perceive objects in various ways. The way you perceive things, that is how you are going to get from that thing. So the Rishi tells them that, you are your children. You have expectation of gratitude from your children. When you don't get that attitude, when you don't get that gratitude from your children, you feel sad. You feel that, you're losing something in life. So this brings out of expectation. And the Rishi explains and he says, this is like a whirlpool. The whirlpool it's going on round and round. And as it goes round and round, you're getting deeper into it. And there is no way in which you can get out of it. The only way in which you can get out of it is that you must pray to Mahamaya. Now, this first time this expression Mahamaya comes, and Mahamaya is also defined as Yoga Nidra, and this Yoga Nidra is depicted by a divine being who is the creator, the liberator, and the one who has supreme knowledge. This Mahamaya is the one in whom all the three functions are there. It creates delusions, it liberates you from delusions, and it also gives you the supreme being. Then, when this answer the Rishi gives, it continues their conversation, and then they come and ask, who is Mahamaya? And how do we know that Mahamaya is there? And how does she act? Please tell me a little bit about her glory, is a question that is asked. To that, the Rishi gives a very elaborate expression, and he says that Mahamaya is eternal. It is the very embodiment of the universe. It is all pervasive. And she incorporates in many ways. And when she manifests herself in the world, it is for a particular purpose. And when the purpose is served, her job is over. And I will tell you now a little bit about what happens. And so Mahavishnu is, there's a pralaya which has happened. Pralaya is at the end of each yuga, the whole universe is destroyed and it is full of water. There are no living beings are there. And that is a time when Mahavishnu is floating on the ocean on a bed of a serpent, and he is taking his yoga nidra. At that time, from the wax of his ears, two asuras are born. They are called Madhu and Kaitabha. Now, these two come into being when Vishnu is taking his rest. And this Madhu and Kaitabha, the minute they come, the world is then created and they take over the entire Indra Padavi, that is the position of Indra. They fight with all the Devas and they defeat all of them and send everybody away. And they are the people who are troubling everybody. And so Brahma then talks and says, now what do we do now? We need to tackle this issue. It's a serious issue because these Madhu and Kaitabha, they are going to kill everybody and they won't allow anybody to remain in peace, especially the Devas. So when Brahma thinks about it, and Brahma then prays to Vishnu to say, oh Vishnu, you are in Yoga Nidra, please awaken Mahamaya, the Supreme Mother, who is the creative force. And she is the one who is going to take care of the whole world. You know, the mother is the one who protects and preserves everything. She is the one who can do everything. At that juncture, Vishnu listens and gives a boon that I am going to come and take care of this. And there is a long discussion in the Purana about how this happens and at what stage Vishnu comes and etc. And when the prayer is made to Vishnu to invoke Mahamaya to come to see that the demons are destroyed, Madhu and Kaitabha, he wakes up and then these Madhu and Kaitabha, they say, oh, you can't kill us, we are in water. So then Purana narrates that Vishnu sits down, takes them up, puts them on his thighs as he is sitting cross-legged, and he annihilates them and kills them on his knees. So this is the end of the first chapter of Devi Mahatmya. And the next chapter we go to is Mahishasura. Now, as I said, each chapter they talk about number of things that are happening, number of demons that are coming, and how exactly this is to be tackled. Now you go next to the chapter related to Mahishasura. Now Mahishasura is somebody who has the body of a buffalo, and he is also another person who was going on troubling the gods. And Indra and he fought a 100-year-old battle. The battle went on for 100 years. At the end of that period, Indra says he loses the battle. Mahishasura takes over, and he takes over the Indra's position. And all the gods then go to Vishnu and Maheshwara, and they pray to him. And they say, no, this man, this Mahishasura is, cannot be conquered. So you have to do something about it. So then the triumvirate then decide that, well, I think, it's time we stepped in. And in one verse, the origin of Mahamaya, which is the very divine being, which pervades this entire Saptashati, that is described. And it says that from the face of Vishnu, there was an intense light that was coming, and the concentration of light was like a blazing mountain, and it was like a huge flame, and it was so bright that one could not see. And the Purana goes on with a detailed description about how this light formed into a human body of the Devi. What are all the powers that were imbued into that form of the Devi? It's a very elaborate discussion, from whom what was taken, from which god the feet were taken, like that. It goes on describing like that. And after the Devi takes shape, the Devi then, a very famous expression which is used in many of the Puranas is called Attahasa. Hasa is to smile. Attahasa is to smile loudly, ha, 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 like that. Loudly, when you smile, there is Attahasa. So when the Devi is invoked, she comes and she gives the battle cry. And when she starts the battle, because she is incorporated, she has come into being because of the prayer of the gods. So she knows what she has to do. So she says, who is this demon who's troubling you? And she says, I'm going to go and annihilate that demon. And so the war in this chapter, there's an elaborate discussion about how the war takes place and how Devi fights with the forces of Mahishasura. Mahishasura doesn't come first. Whenever a war is started, the field marshal doesn't step into the field. His foot soldiers will come. So his foot soldiers come. And there's a long battle that goes on. And at the end of the battle, in the 69th verse of this chapter, the entire forces in the army of Mahishasura is destroyed, which was invincible by the gods. So the Devi single-handedly does that. This brings us to the end of the second chapter. The third chapter is the slaying of the Mahishasura himself. Now, chapter 3, before Mahishasura comes, his sidekicks will come. One is Chikasura and one Chandika. Now, these are his bodyguards or the next in command. So they come to fight. And the peculiarity of the war, insofar as chapter 3 is concerned, is that these two asuras, they can take any form they want at their will. So whenever fighting is taking place, they suddenly will become a lion, then they'll become a cow, then they'll become an elephant, they'll become anything they want. And so the Devi has to fight with all of them. And there's a very elaborate description of how the war takes place. And at the end of this, Devi is able to annihilate both the Chikasura and Chamara and Chandika, all three of them. And finally, she is able to annihilate Mahishasura also. That is why one of the names that the Devi gets is Mahishasura Mardini. There is a famous composition, I don't know, you might have heard of it. Mahishasura Mardini Ramya Kapardini Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramya Kapardini Ranyanute. Like that, it's a stotra that goes on. So this is how the third chapter comes to an end. Then you come to the fourth chapter, where, as I was telling you, there are different forms of worship. So one form of worship is that you must praise the God, and chapter 4, and then you have to go to chapter 4, please. What are the offerings you have to do to Devi is something which you get, because now after Mahishasura is annihilated, Indra gets back his position, and therefore Indra is very happy now. So he has to now thank the god. So what he does is, this chapter 4 is a description of how Indra shows his gratitude to Mother by offering her dhupa, deepa, naivedya, etc. So in number of ways, this describes the way in which Indra is paying his obeisance to Devi. I will just say, at the end of all this, after being pleased, Devi is worshipped and Devi is now thanked for all this. Then Devi comes forward and asks a question. And the question of Devi is available in shloka number 31 of this chapter number 4. So the question the Devi asks is, I'm pleased with your devotion. Please tell me, what is it that you want from me? What is the boon that you want from me? And then the Devas say, you have already granted us a boon by slaying this great demon Mahishasura, and you have nothing more remains to be done. And only thing is, our boon we want is whenever we are in trouble again, and we think about you to come and help us to sort out calamities, please hear us and come back. So it's a very interesting boon. Now I don't want anything. When I want, I'll call you, then you must come. That's the kind of boon that is sought. And of course, Devi, in her grace, says, yes, I'm always going to be available. And whenever you have any trouble, you come to me. So this also signifies that in human life, we have so many difficulties, so many ups and downs. So when we have these issues, what do? We go back to Devi, we go back to our God, we go back to Swami, and we say, Swami, I have these problems, so I'm leaving it to you. Please show me the way. Or you may say, please solve the problem. Or you may say, I have to forego this problem. There's no way that I can live without bearing this problem. Therefore, help me to bear this problem. These kind of prayers can be made. Then you go to the next chapter, chapter number 5, and there is a discussion in this chapter. It's a very interesting discussion which has a lot of prayers also is there. Madhuri is now going to read a few portions of it. Now, the idea of Saraswati comes in now. Saraswati, as we all know, has a particular form. She's seated in a particular way, wearing a particular dress. She is the consort of Brahma. And they now go to Saraswati and pray to her to say, there are two great demons called Shumbha and Nishumbha. They have come and now taken away all the possessions of the gods. And therefore, we are in a difficult situation. The sun, the moon, Kubera, Yama, Varuna, all of them are having a particular role to play. Varuna is the god of water, and Kubera is the god of wealth. Yama is the god of death. The sun and the moon, they are the ones who give us life. All these functions are taken over. Therefore, you have to come. And they remind that, you have given us a boon, that when we are in trouble, we'll come to you and you will come to our rescue. Therefore, we have come to you now. Therefore, please invoke your powers and come to our rescue, is a question. It is at that stage that there's an interesting prayer that is there. You can read.
Just a few lines. Just a few.
Yeah, just a few.
Yeah.
There is a long list of prayers. Just to give you a glimpse of it, Madhuri will read a few portions.
Om Namo Devyai Mahadevyai Shivaye Satatan Namaha Namah Prakrute Bhadraye Niyata Pranataspatam Raudraye Namo Nityaye Gaurye Dhatre Namo Namaha Jyotsnaye Chendurupinye Sukhaye Satatan Namaha Ati Somyati Raudraye Natastasye Namo Namaha Namo Jagat Pratishtaye Devye Krutye Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Shraddha Rupena Samsita Namastastai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Daya Rupena Samsita Namastastai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Matru Rupena Samsita Namastastai 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 Namo Namaha.
See, this is only a glimpse of it. This stotra, it describes her in different forms. What are you is first it describes, and then says, I am prostrating myself in front of you. So those of you are interested, if you look up, you will find the translations and meanings also. But it's a very beautiful prayer which describes the various attributes of the goddess and says, I am grateful to you for all that you have done. So going back to the story, after this praise, now we are at a stage when after meeting Saraswati and praying for this and praising her, they are now invoking, say, the Shumbha and Nishumbha are the ones who are troubling us. So the chapter goes on, there's a very elaborate discussion. I'm not going to go into details of that. The type of weapons that were used, what words were exchanged. In fact, impertinence of the Shumbha and Nishumbha, it goes to such an extent that they send two of their assistants, one Chanda and Munda, and they come and he tells them, you catch hold of the Devi by her hair, drag her and bring her here, and I'll make her my wife. This is the impertinence with which he says that. So the Chanda Munda, they come, and the Purana describes the dialogue. First time when they see her, they say, we've been sent by Shumbha and Shumbha, and we are their servants. I'm coming here to take you to him now. So the Devi then gets infuriated, and there's a huge battle that takes place. And at the end of the battle, Chanda and Munda are annihilated. But the time for Shumbha and Nishumbha comes a little later. But their assistants who have come to humiliate Devi reach their end. The next chapter is chapter number 6, which is Dhumralochana. Now, this Dhumralochana, this Chanda Munda, are like the two generals of Shumbha and Nishumbha. They send them one assistant general, and that is Dhumralochana. He's also a fierce warrior, and this chapter describes the various forms in which the Devi had to take care of him and have a war with him. And finally, at the end of it, all the weapons that were used, etc., are all narrated in some great detail. At the end of it, Devi successfully annihilates Dhumralochana. And the end of this chapter is when there are no other forces which are there, which are going to assist Chanda and Munda, because Shumbha and Nishumbha, because Chanda Munda are gone, Dhumralochana is also gone. Now comes the role of Chanda and Munda. At the end of this, chapter 7, next chapter, is the detailed description of the war between Devi and Chanda Munda. That is one of the reasons why at the end of this chapter, again I'm saying there's a very elaborate description. For those of you who are interested, I would suggest that you read the description, because it gives you a number of factors about what is good, what is bad, what should be met, what should not be met, and how people have to conduct themselves. Number of things, ideas you get, as you read these descriptions. At the end of it, the Devi succeeds in annihilating Chanda and Munda, and it's after a very great battle. And at the end of that battle, she gets the name Chamunda. See, Chamunda or Chamundi, she is called, is one of the names of the Devi. Therefore, at the end of Chanda and Munda, she succeeds in annihilating him. Then one more person comes. See, that means the number of demons that come in our life are so many. It's difficult for us to imagine that there are so many people who are coming against us. So we now go to the next person. He comes in chapter number 8, and he is Ratabija. Now, after Chanda and Munda are annihilated, the Danavas, that is the Asuras, they were completely destroyed. So they were now just waiting their time. They were regrouping. And 86 Asuras all get together after that. And they constitute another person called Ratabija. Now, Ratabija, Shumbha sends his 86 Asuras and also Ratabija. Now, the significance of Ratabija is, that is why, this again allegorically, the Purana says that every time Ratabija was hurt by an arrow or any weapon, one drop of blood, if it falls on the ground, from there, several Asuras are born. They just take shape. So that means it's impossible to kill him, because the minute one drop of blood falls, there will be millions of people Asuras getting born. So how do you solve such a problem is a question. So that means, our desires are unending. If you finish one desire, you get 10 more. So there's no way you can actually cut down all your desires. That's why you go back to the first chapter, when the dialogue between the king and the Vaishya was that, why is it that I'm still connected to something which no longer belongs to me? And he says, then it's the senses that are doing all these things. So at the end of this chapter, Ratabija also is annihilated. And in the 52nd verse of this chapter, Ratabija's end is narrated. Then Nishumbha is there. Shumbha is now gone. Nishumbha is another one. And Nishumbha's Vada is described in chapter 9. And of course, the thing is, the great thing of this narration is that at every stage, the description of the Devi comes. And, at different stages, they describe Devi in her various forms. So in other words, this is an adoration of Devi throughout. Though you think it's a story about a war, but in the middle, suddenly you say, Rishiru Vacha, and Rishi states something. Then Rajo Vacha, then Raja will say something. Like this, it goes on like this. So the Ratabija is gone. Nishumbha is chapter number 9. And then we go to, after Nishumbha's Vada, Shumbha comes in chapter number 10, which is again, there's again a lot of description about how it happened, etc. So at the end of this, we come to a portion which is called the Narayani hymn. Now, in this Narayani hymn, that means the goddess has taken care of all the problems. Now, what remains is for us to show gratitude to the goddess, and therefore, chapter 11 is dealing with this. And I request Madhuri to chant a few verses from chapter 11.
सर्वमंगल मांगल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थ साधिके शरण्ये त्र्यंबके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते सृष्टि स्थिति विनाशानां शक्तिभूते सनातनी गुणाश्रये गुणमये नारायणी नमोस्तुते शरणागत दीनार्थ परित्राण परायणे सर्वस्यार्ति हरे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते शंख चक्र गदा शांग गृहीत परमायुधे प्रसिद्ध वैष्णवी रूपे नारायणी नमोस्तुते नरसिंह रूपेणोग्रेण हन्तु दैत्यान् कृतोद्यमे त्रैलोक्य त्राण सहिते नारायणी नमोस्तुते शिवदूती स्वरूपेण हत दैत्य महाबले घोर रूपे महारावे नारायणी नमोस्तुते सर्वस्वरूपे सर्वेशे सर्वशक्ति समन्विते भयेभ्यस्त्राहिनो देवी दुर्गे देवी नमोस्तुते.
The stotra goes on. It's a long stotra. This is the portion by which we show gratitude to Narayani. As I said, the goddess has many names. Chandi, Chandika, Nishumbha, then Narayani is one more name that has got. Now the next chapter we go to is chapter 12. Now chapter 12 is a very interesting chapter. What it does is, it's like a eulogy to Punya. Means why should we do good things? What is going to happen if you do good things? This is what, and it is summarizing that took care somebody was not doing good things. This Madhu, Kaitabha, all those people, Nishumbha, all of them met with an end. So what is it that is going to happen by praising the goddess? Now it expresses, it says that when you do this prayer, your mind is freed from fear. You will not have any enemies. You will not have anybody who hates you. And your mind will get concentrated. It will help you to concentrate your mind. It will also help you to have a sense of well-being. Because our physical well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, all these are very important. So this is another thing which it helps you to achieve. And also it says that by reading this, all your great calamities which you may face in your life, they are all just vanished. Goddess will take care of it. And when you offer your prayer, when you offer your heart, when you offer sacrifice to the Devi in a fire sacrifice or otherwise, all what you do will be heard by Devi. This is an assurance being given. It's not that you pour some ghee into some fire and something, it will go there. This is a pakka assurance being given that this is what it has to be. And by hearing the glorification of God, what is it that we get is, we get a sense of elation in our mind. Now, Bhagavan always used to tell us you have to sing bhajans, no? Why do we sing bhajans? What do we say in the bhajans? We only refer to name. When we refer to the name, the form comes into our mind. Then we refer to the activities of that name. Now, Vignahara, we say. Vignahara means one who takes out all your vignas, difficulties. No? When we say that, we remember Ganapati. Like that. So, this chapter is again a very interesting chapter, which deals elaborately with what it is like the Palashruti. They call it Palashruti. Palashruti is when you hear or chant something, what is it that you get in return for it? That is the phala that you get. I think the next chapter, you're going to read from 12? Yeah, okay. Madhuri will read something from 12.
Now this gives the Phalashruti. It says, Ashtamyam cha Chaturdashyam, that is the day of Ashtami, Chaturdashi and Navami, which are very, very important. Ashtamyam cha Chaturdashyam, Navamyam cheka Chetasaha Shoshanti Chaiva Ye Bhaktyam Mama Mahatmya Muktamam. Whoever recites on these days, Devi showers the auspiciousness, the protection to her devotees. They may not have any fear from their Shatru, that is, enemies. Shatru to na bhayam tasya, tasyu to van rajataha, na shastra narto yodhyat kadachit sambhava vishyati. Sharat Kale Mahapuja. This is the Sharad Ritu. So, Sharat Kale Mahapuja Kriyate Yacha Varshiki. Yearly, we celebrate this. Tasyam Mamait Mahatmam Shrutvam Bhakti Samanvitaha. Everybody should recite during this period, which is going to be very auspicious to everybody. Sarva Badha Vinirmukto Dhana Dhanya Sutamvitaha. All your badhas, all the obstacles, they vanish. Manushyo mat prasadena bhavishyati na samshaya. There is no doubt that every person who chants this, all the obstacles and the difficulties would vanish. Shanti karmani sarvatra tatha duswapna darshane. There will be peace everywhere. Graha pida suchograsu mahatmya shuna yanvitaha.
Now, she again gave you a glimpse only of the various benefits that you're going to get from this, from the reading of this, when you should read, how you should read, and what are the benefits that will flow to you from this reading. This again an assurance, it's an assurance given by this the Purana itself. Therefore, we can have no doubt about it. Like the Vedic mantras, we all believe that the Vedas are authentic and that it gives us the right direction. So the same way, your devotion will help you to go along this direction. I come to the last chapter. The last chapter is that this story started with Suratha and the Vaishya, Samadhi. Vaishya's name is Samadhi, and Suratha is the king. So the rishis say, after having narrated all this great story of Devi, now the Devi is giving some boon to us. So the Devi gives a boon to the king by saying, King, because of your penance and the advice that you took in the beginning chapters of this Saptashati, the boon giving is, you will get an imperishable kingdom. You will go back to where you were and you will be happy and you will live long, long life after that with all the comfort and the power and glory that you always had. And the boon given to the Vaishya is very interesting. The boon is, I am going to give you knowledge. You know, Vaishyas are the trading community. They're usually holding money, assets, selling, buying, things like that. So Devi says, I am going to give you knowledge. And what knowledge I'm going to give you is knowledge about me, about Devi. In other words, you see, ultimately all of us are here to realize God. To realize God how? If God is giving you the boon to say that I am going to give you this, in Bhagavan says, when Arjuna asks him that I want to see your divine form in Bhagavad Gita, then Bhagavan asks him, if I show you my divine form, will you be able to see it in these eyes that you've got, your human eyes? So then before the answer can be given, Bhagavan says, I will give you divine eyes. Divyam dadamite chakshuhu. He says, tells Arjuna, he says, Bhagavan, I am going to give you those eyes, in which it is possible for you to see the divine. Bhagavan often used to say, you have to see the divine in everyone. Now, if you see a poor person somewhere, if you see somebody is suffering, somebody is in distress, if you see God in him, what will you do? you will not just turn your head and go on. You will say, God is there, let me worship him. That is what it is. That's what the Devi is giving the interesting boon to the Vaishya by saying, I'm giving you supreme knowledge. And the supreme knowledge is about me and about my divinity. And therefore, in future, you will not have any delusions about which item you should have, which house you should have, how many children you should have, how they should treat you. All this should not be in your concern because I'm giving you the supreme knowledge. This is how it comes to an end.
Divine.
You can. Time ho gaya. We'll conclude by chanting the Devi Durga Saptashati.
No, the experience of the divine.
You want to?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
When he said, Devi, she shows herself, when you pray to her, and she shows herself to the bhakta. This has actually happened with me. I always pray to God. I mean, why am I praying you in front of your picture or in front of your idol? I am not happy with that. I want to see you, Pratyaksha. I want to see you with my eyes. And one such incident which happened many years ago, I was doing the Laksha Archana, that is 1 lakh and Kumkumarchana, and it so happened one day that after finishing it was the last day where we had to perform the Havan. Now, early morning when I got up, and I used to get up very early to clean the altar, and I was a little reluctant to open the door of my puja room. I felt there is something inside, but I was not prepared. So I just called my husband's name, and then I opened. So everything was fine. Later on, like at the same day, we performed the Havan, that is Devi Laksharchane Lalita Sahasranam Havan. And during the time of Havan, we are supposed to offer Gudana, that is sweet rice, with every name of taking Lalita Sahasranama. So that normally my husband does it. I was sitting next to him, and suddenly what I see at the Havan Kunda, it's you know how the Havan Kunda is square, and on the opposite side I see a Durga, that is or how we see in the pictures, sitting on a lion, and live. This is live. I'm just seeing her, and as he's offering the ahuti on each name, her tongue comes out, and she takes the ahuti and she consumes it. This happened for quite some time. I didn't react. I was just immersed in that very moment. I wanted to just experience that life, which God was very generous, and what should I say? She gave me that darshan. So it is possible. It's not what it would happen in past. It can happen now. Only that urge and the intensity of praying and asking is very important. Saira.
Thank you. I think we come to the end of our time. You want to chant the Durga Sukta? We'll conclude by chanting the Durga Sukta. Jatavedase sunavama soma marati yato nidahati vedaha sanaparshadati durgani vishwanave vasindum duritatyagnihi tam agnivarnam tapasa jvalantim vairochanim karma phaleshu jushtam Durgam Devi Gum Sharanamaham Prapadye Sutarasitarase Namaha Agne Tvam Parayanavyo Asman Swasti Birati Durgani Vishwaha Oscha Prithvi Bahulana Urvi Bhavato Kayatanaya Yashayo Vishwanino Durgaha Jataveda Sindhunnanava Duritadi Varshi Agne Agrivan Manasa Gurano Osmakam Bodhya Vitatanuna Pruthanajitam Sahamanamugramadnigum Huvema Paramat Sadastat Sanaparshadati Durgani Vishwakshamat Devo Atadurita अत्यग्निः रत्नोषिकमेढ्यो अध्वरेषु सनाच होता नव्यश्च सत्सि स्वाञ्च आग्ने तनुवं विप्रयस्वास्मभ्यं च सौभगमायजस्व गोभिर्जुष्टमयुषो निषिक्तं तवेन्द्र विष्णोरनुसञ्चरेम नाकस्य पुष्टमभिसंवसानो वैष्णवीं लोक इह मादयन्ताम् कात्यायनाय विद्महे कन्याकुमारी धीमहि तन्नो दुर्गे प्रचोदयात्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। जय साई राम।
जय साई राम।